There are moments in the life of a nation when history holds its breath. When the weight of decades of struggle, of unfulfilled promise, of a people's collective patience finally meets a leader willing to act, not tomorrow, not cautiously, not with one eye on popularity, but boldly, decisively, and with the full force of conviction. Nigeria is living through one of those moments right now. And at the center of this unfolding story stands President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, a leader whose name has become synonymous with the kind of structural transformation that most politicians only talk about in campaign speeches but rarely dare to execute once in power. Nigeria is not a small story. With over 220 million people, it is the most populous nation on the African continent. It holds the largest economy in Africa. Its soil is rich with oil, its cities pulse with entrepreneurial energy, and its youth, the most dynamic demographic on earth, carry within them a hunger for greatness that is almost tangible. Yet for too long, this immense potential was constrained by structural dysfunction, fiscal mismanagement, insecurity, and an economic architecture that rewarded dependency over productivity. When Tinubu took office in May 2023, he inherited a nation at a crossroads. And he chose, without hesitation, the harder road, the road that leads somewhere. The infrastructure agenda of this administration has been nothing short of historic. Nigeria's roads tell the story of its economy. When supply chains are broken, when farmers cannot move their harvest, when goods rot before they reach markets, when commuters lose hours of their lives to impassable routes, the entire engine of a nation stalls. Tinubu understood this with a clarity that translated directly into action. His government launched over 440 road projects spanning more than 2,700 kilometers of new and rehabilitated highways across Nigeria's 6 geopolitical zones. These are not symbolic gestures. These are arteries of commerce, lifelines of connectivity, pathways through which a nation's economic bloodstream flows. The Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway, a transformative corridor along Nigeria's coastline, and the Sokoto-Badagry Highway represent generational infrastructure investments that will unlock trade, reduce poverty, and bind communities together in ways that will be felt for decades. Add to this a bold commitment to digital infrastructure, including a proposed $2 billion national fiber optic network that will bring high-speed internet to every corner of Nigeria, and what you see is not a government repairing what is broken, you see a government rebuilding the foundation entirely. Security is the bedrock of civilization. No economy grows in a climate of fear. No child learns effectively when violence shadows the schoolyard. No farmer plants a field he believes he may not live to harvest. For years, Nigeria's security landscape was one of the most challenging in West Africa, a patchwork of insurgencies, banditry, and organized criminal networks that had cost thousands of lives and displaced millions more. Under President Tinubu's command, the Nigerian armed forces have been reinvigorated with purpose and resources. Military operations across the northeast, northwest, and other conflict-affected regions have resulted in the elimination of thousands of armed combatants, the rescue of kidnapping victims, and the gradual restoration of normalcy to communities that had lived under siege. Intelligence sharing between security agencies has been deepened. The welfare of military personnel, their salaries, their insurance benefits, their dignity, has been elevated, because Tinubu knows that a well-supported soldier fights not just with training but with morale. The settlement of over 18 billion naira in outstanding insurance claims to military families was not merely a financial transaction, it was a message from a commander-in-chief who sees his forces as human beings, not expendable instruments. Slowly but unmistakably, peace is returning to communities that had forgotten what peace felt like. Then there is the decision that would define this presidency in the pages of history, the removal of the petrol subsidy. Let us be honest about what this was. It was the single most politically dangerous economic decision a Nigerian leader could make. For decades, successive governments had maintained an artificial subsidy on petrol that cost Nigeria trillions of naira annually. On paper, it looked like a gift to the people. In practice, it was a mechanism that drained the national treasury, enabled corruption on an industrial scale, and kept Nigeria trapped in a cycle of fiscal dependency that made long-term planning nearly impossible. By the time Tinubu took office, the subsidy was consuming resources that should have been building hospitals, schools, roads, and security infrastructure. On his very first day in office, in one of the most dramatic opening acts of any presidency in Nigerian history, Tinubu declared that the subsidy was gone. The short-term pain was real, and the administration did not pretend otherwise. a new minimum wage of 70,000 naira was introduced to cushion the impact on workers. But the long-term gains have been transformative. Net foreign exchange reserves climbed from under $4 billion in 2023 to over $23 billion by the end of 2024. The Nigerian National Petroleum Company, once a vessel perpetually taking on water, began contributing positively to the Federation account. The fiscal space created by subsidy removal allowed the government to redirect resources toward the programs that actually change lives. The economic reforms did not stop there. The unification of Nigeria's exchange rate, a policy that brought the official and parallel market rates into alignment, sent an immediate and powerful signal to global investors: Nigeria is open for serious business. The response was unmistakable. Foreign direct investment commitments surpassed $50 billion. In the digital economy alone, investment leaped from $22 million in the first quarter of 2023 to over $191 million in the same period of 2024, nearly a tenfold increase in 12 months. Nigeria's GDP growth rate reached 4.6% in 2024, its highest in a decade, a figure that economists at the World Bank attributed directly to the structural reforms initiated by this administration. The debt service to revenue ratio, once a suffocating constraint that consumed nearly every naira the government earned, dropped from close to 100% in 2022 to below 40% by the end of 2024. The International Credit Rating Agency Fitch upgraded Nigeria's long-term credit rating and revised the country's outlook from negative to stable. These are not political talking points. These are the cold, objective measurements by which global capital decides where to place its confidence, and the world is placing its confidence in Nigeria. But economic transformation without human transformation is incomplete. President Tinubu has shown, through concrete programs, that his vision for Nigeria is ultimately a vision for its people, not as statistics on a spreadsheet but as human beings with dignity, potential, and the right to a better life. The Presidential Loan and Grant Scheme has reached over 900,000 Nigerians, placing capital in the hands of micro-entrepreneurs, farmers, and small business owners who previously had no access to formal financial systems. The student loan scheme has opened the doors of higher education to over 300,000 young Nigerians who might otherwise have been locked out by financial barriers. More than 5,700,000 vulnerable households have received direct cash transfers under the National Cash Transfer Program. Over 1,000 primary health care centers have been restored to functionality, with 5,000 more undergoing renovation. 4,000 women have received free cesarean section surgeries under a maternal health initiative that speaks directly to the value this government places on women's lives. The monthly stipend for National Youth Service Corps members was increased from 33,000 to 77,000 naira, a recognition that young Nigerians who serve their country deserve to be sustained while doing so. These are the building blocks of a nation being remade. Not in the abstract language of manifestos, but in the concrete reality of roads being paved, schools being funded, soldiers being supported, investors arriving, and ordinary Nigerians, for the first time in a long time, beginning to believe that the system might actually work for them. What kind of leader makes these choices? Not a comfortable one. Not one calculating re-election odds with every policy decision. Not one who chooses the applause of today over the inheritance of tomorrow. Tinubu has consistently chosen the harder path because he believes, with the conviction of someone who has studied governance, who has seen what works and what fails, who carries within him a deep and unshakable belief in Nigeria's destiny, that this country is worth the sacrifice of political capital. That 220 million lives are worth the courage it takes to make the decisions that less committed leaders would defy indefinitely. Nigeria's story is not finished. The chapters ahead will be written by the consequences of choices being made right now, in the corridors of infrastructure ministries, in the boardrooms of newly arrived foreign investors, in the hearts of young Nigerians who are beginning, slowly but surely, to dare to dream again. President Bola Tinubu has set the direction. He has pointed toward a Nigeria that does not apologize for its ambitions, that does not shrink from the scale of its potential, that does not wait for permission from history to take its rightful place among the great nations of the world. The new Nigeria is not a slogan. It is a construction site. And the work has already begun.